Welcome to My Spoonie Sisters, featuring stories from special guests dedicated to empowering those with chronic illness. Our goal? To connect people and provide the support and tools they need to live a better life. For those with chronic illness, our energy levels just fade faster. We must be more purposeful with the spoons allotted to us. So grab your coffee or tea, sister, and tune in as My Spoonie Sisters share stories of living with chronic illness. Hi, my Spoonie Sisters. I'm your host, Gracefully Jen, and I have the pleasure of introducing you today to a super awesome friend of mine. Her name is Chelsea. She's an RA warrior sharing her healing journey and planting seeds and watching them grow. Good morning, Chelsea. How are you?
Good morning, Jenny. I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing well. It is my birthday, as you and I had just talked about. And so I'm so glad to have someone to chat with and have fun with today. So thank you for joining me.
Of course. Happy birthday.
Thank you. So this episode's going to be a little different. Like sometimes we have it sounding more like an interview, but today Chelsea and I are going to just kind of talk autoimmune life. But first, what I want to do is, Chelsea, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey?
So I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis about 3 years ago, back in 2019. And I honestly didn't have any signs leading up to my diagnosis. I was working out every day. I was very active in my life, socially, physically. And one day after the gym, I got what I thought was tendonitis, like a pull in my right shoulder. And so I took a rest week, not thinking much of it. And it wouldn't go away for about a couple weeks. And one day when I was working at a medical center, I reached up to grab something and I felt that same pull again. And so I really thought that I sprained my shoulder or pulled a muscle. So they sent me to kind of like a little clinic that they have for employees to make sure I didn't hurt myself on the job. And he even agreed that he assumed it was tendonitis too. But he told me that I needed to follow up with my PCP. When I met with my PCP, she noticed other autoimmune signs that I didn't really think of, which were the flushed cheeks. And she automatically started asking me questions. I wasn't aware of what was happening because I've never had a medical scare, I guess. And she said at the end of the questionnaire that she thinks I might have lupus. So she took me to get blood, or she didn't take me, but she sent me to get blood work. And that's when my results came back with rheumatoid arthritis. And I think after that, it just kind of snowballed, and it just really happened so quickly that I almost was in denial that I had rheumatoid arthritis. And since then I've been battling it for 3+ years. I also recently got diagnosed with scleritis in my right eye, and a couple weeks ago, also uveitis in the same eye. So that basically means I am having flares in the front and the back of my right eye. And yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at right now. It's kind of been a crazy few years.
You know, I almost feel like a lot of us, our first few years are always kind of crazy like that. It's always like it snowballs and it's thing after thing. So how do you stay optimistic?
I think I try my best to stay optimistic. I am definitely a people pleaser. So I have a habit that in front of people, I seem very positive and optimistic about this journey, but behind closed doors with like my husband, Angel, and my parents, I'm not as optimistic as you think. I definitely go through trials. And before my RA diagnosis, all through high school and my early 20s, I battled and still do depression and anxiety. And recently, last year, I also got diagnosed with PTSD. So these are all things that I'm learning about myself through my RA diagnosis. And I, try very hard to seem optimistic with people, but it doesn't look like that behind closed doors. I will say that I try to listen to motivating podcasts. I do therapy. I do yoga. I incorporate things that bring me joy to help distract me when I spiral. So it's still a work in progress, I feel.
Absolutely. And, you know, on my down days, when I log into my Instagram and I see something awesome and uplifting from you or from, Megan or Chelsea, the other Chelsea, Danny, Linnea, I mean, so many amazing warriors.
Mm-hmm.
That's what keeps me going. And
Yes.
I think that's what's so cool about our community is we've all connected. We're all lifting each other up and supporting each other. And so on those really rough days when I just feel like all I want to do is lay in bed and cry, I can get on there and then I see an amazing quote or something that I just really needed that day.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I think community is a huge part of my growth in my journey. Prior to starting therapy, which was a year ago, I kind of kept it to myself. I didn't share it much with friends or other people in my life just because I didn't feel they would understand or connect with it just because they're in different paths in their life. And that's when I decided, with the push of my therapist, to start the Florists Grow Here page to share my journey and connect with other Spoonies. And I honestly think that was a turning point in my journey because I have gotten to meet really great people that have connected and bonded over similar paths. And I think even with Megan, I train with her and we kind of have a very similar, we do diagnosis, RA, but we're on the same medication. I chat with her. She understands where I'm coming from on hard days. And I think having her as my trainer has been so helpful, and getting to meet other people, even in our mindset groups and stuff. So yeah, I definitely think community is a huge part in growing with your autoimmune disease.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? I think every once in a while, there's something that comes out that kind of gives the term Spoonie or autoimmune warriors a bad rep, right? I don't know if you remember, but several months ago, there was an article that came out. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
It painted a picture of Spoonies as attention getters and high school girls that are sad and not getting enough attention and wanting to pretend to be sick and trick doctors into diagnosis and stuff like that. And I'm sure there are people out there that do that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
but how often? It's so rare.
Exactly.
And what I'd really like people to understand about people like you and people like me and all of our fellow friends is that's not how we are. Most of the time in our day-to-day lives, we don't talk about it. We don't tell anyone that we're in pain. We don't discuss our illnesses at all. We walk around like seemingly normal, healthy people, just trying to live, survive, thrive. And so I hate the fact that we get a bad rep for things like that.
No, I agree, because when that article came out, I remember it had Allie in it, and I love Allie. I think she was one of the first people I followed on TikTok that had an autoimmune. And so she gave me the courage and motivation and kind of like a safe place to post my story. And seeing her on that article, I was shocked and a little bit scared, because that was kind of my worst fear. And I think other Spoonies as well, of being judged for sharing our story, because I know for me, I don't want people to think I'm posting a sob story or trying to find sympathy or empathy from people, especially when friends and coworkers started following that page. I started to get a little hesitant on sharing, just because I didn't want to know what their opinion of me was for being vulnerable on a platform and sharing my health journey, because I know that I wouldn't share that with them in person. So that was really scary to see that news article come out and spin something that's become empowering, and spin it to where we are just looking for sympathy from people, wanting people to feel bad for us. So yeah, I definitely can relate to that.
And to go with that too, I think that so many of us, we walk around day to day pretending that we're totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, okay, so everyone's knowing about my shoulder problem now, and I've been complaining about it quite a bit now, but it's been going on like, oh gosh, it's got to be a year and a half now, maybe even longer. I have to go back and look at some of my appointments with my rheumatologist. But how long did I keep it quiet? And nobody knew I even had a problem. They watch me dance around and do goofy things and pretend I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
And really I have like a torn bicep and all this other crazy stuff going on. It's like, you know, we keep it to ourselves. We don't want the tears and the hugs and the, oh, poor you. We don't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of what we're doing is to share awareness, but also laugh too. I mean, how many people create TikToks and Reels just to kind of joke around and play with what we're dealing with? Because if we can't laugh at ourselves,
yeah,
I don't know.
Then what else is there? I think it is good to laugh at ourselves. I also think that we should be a little bit more open to sharing our journeys with people around us, so that to educate about chronic illnesses. And I think even when I was working at a medical center, I hadn't shared that I was having flares for a bit, because I was afraid of people thinking I was asking for accommodations I didn't need, or people thinking I was trying to find an easy way out of working or anything like that, or not believe me, because on the outside I looked fine, but on the inside it was very stressful and painful to go in to work and do these physical expectations that I had with patients, and then go home and I had to put heating pads on and have to soak in Epsom salts and take my medicines and be crying until my next shift, because I had to do it all over again. And I'll never forget when I started to share with some coworkers, because they could see me walking in with a knee brace or gloves, compression gloves. And some days I wouldn't need them. Some days I would. And I remember a coworker saying, you shouldn't let the management see you being able to carry this child one day and then not, because they're not going to believe you. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, because it was my worst fear. I didn't want to be seen as a liar. I didn't want to feel like I had to put a performance on, or on good days not be able to spend time with my patients the way I'd like to. So that automatically gave me a perspective of, okay, I need to really hold back what I'm going through, because I don't want people to start assuming I am not actually dealing with an invisible illness. So I think I've learned from that. And instead of being afraid of not sharing, I want to be able to educate people and let them know, there are good days where I can actually have enough spoons to get everything I want to do. And then there are days where I'm completely out of spoons and I need to rest. And that's okay. I think finding acceptance in it and growing in education on invisible illnesses can really help a lot of spoonies out there not to feel the way I did in that situation.
Calling all Spoonies. As a host of a chronic illness podcast, nothing lights up my day more than hearing from you, our incredible listeners. Whether it's a topic close to your heart that you want us to uncover, or you are keen to show your own journey as a guest on our show, your voice matters. Living with chronic illness can often feel isolating, but through the power of podcasting, we can come together as a community to uplift, educate, and inspire one another. Your stories, insights, and questions drive the conversations we have and the topics we explore. So if there's something on your mind, a story that you are just itching to share, or a guest you'd love to hear from, don't hesitate to reach out. Your voice is not only welcomed here, but celebrated. Let's continue to amplify the voices of those living with chronic illnesses and create a space where everyone feels heard, supported, and empowered. Together, we are stronger. I'm always trying to figure out what's the easiest way to explain it. What is the way to get people to understand, because you don't want to limp around every day.
Yeah.
So that they get the point that you sometimes have knee problems, because sometimes your knee is not, that's just an example, obviously, but yeah, you don't want to have to pretend not to limp or limp every day. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. You have to feel like that. And so I think the education, the awareness, the support, those are all so important and valuable, but we've got to get comfortable in our own skin to be able to do these things. And that's why I think having so many people in the community speaking up has been really encouraging and empowering, especially to newly diagnosed people.
Yeah.
12 years ago, 10 years ago, I would have loved to have known some of the people I know today.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, when you're diagnosed when you're younger, you tend to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be crippled by the time I'm 40 and my life is going to be over. I have the body of a 90-year-old, but it's not always going to be that way. We can still have our good days.
Yeah. And I think that's what communities taught me too, because that's exactly how I felt, the way you felt, of what is my life going to look like when I'm in my 40s, 50s, 60s, and being scared of the what ifs and not being, and it almost becomes like it makes you stop living your life. Currently, for me, I was stuck in that anxiety of what ifs, and the people around me don't have autoimmune diseases, and they're living their best life. that's not going to be me. That's the mindset I had at the beginning. And especially because the PCP that diagnosed me gave me a pamphlet, said, you have rheumatoid, you need to see a rheumatologist. And that was it. And so I was left with all these questions of, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? And then when I met with the rheumatologist, we just didn't connect. And there were just disagreements that left me feeling more fearful and more questions. So it really wasn't until I got involved in a Spoonie community that I was able to see people live lives and be happy and fulfilled, and still being able to do things that they did prior to their diagnosis. And I think Megan is a big person that I look up to, because I loved strength training before I got diagnosed. And when I met with the rheumatologist, he said, you can't lift over 10 pounds. You can't be strength training. You can't do this. You can't do that anymore. And I was heartbroken because I loved being active. I loved doing those things. Then when I met Megan, she was like, no, you can do that. It's just shifting how we work out and changing our mindset. And that it gave me hope. And I think finding community with other people will give you hope versus trying to figure it out by yourself and having so many voices of doctors and experts and come at you, and it becomes overwhelming. But it's not until you meet someone that's living your same life, at least similar to, that you're like, okay, I can breathe. There is hope. And you can continue to do things just in a modified way. And that's okay.
100%. And there was something you touched on too when he was telling you couldn't lift over 10 pounds. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to scream and say, false. I have talked to so many people, Megan, Liz, Ashley, Danny. Look at all these, excuse my language for a second, but badass women that are out there hiking mountains, lifting weights, winning contests. I mean, yes. We can do these things. We just need to learn how to do it properly and what our body can handle. Because when we're first diagnosed, my knees were hurting, my hands were hurting, my shoulders. I was like, oh crap. I gotta barely use these now. No, false, because now you're going to cause more pain by not moving.
Yeah.
Still gotta move.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I was about to cause myself to be crippled just by not moving.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that is the craziness of it all, is him being told you can't do these certain things. And then me just being at home doing nothing because I was so afraid of making a flare worse. And so I didn't stay active in the early days, where I feel like if I had continued to at least go on walks, if I tried a little bit of strength training at a lower weight, I think the flares wouldn't have been as intense as they were when I just stopped being physically active. And to now, just to see from the beginning of my diagnosis 3 years ago, I was living on the third floor of an apartment, and it was just stairs. We didn't have an elevator, and my husband would have to help me up the stairs, had to help me take a shower, brush my hair, put my clothes on. I was in so much pain. And those were the darkest days I've ever had. And he was the one that saw that side of me my parents saw a little bit of it, but they didn't live with me. And he was the one that was encouraging me. We need to keep moving. We have to do these things. And he really did. He's my biggest cheerleader, my biggest rock. And he encouraged me to continue these things. That was my life 3 years ago. And now I am active, not as active as I was before. I allow myself to take breaks, but now I can do yoga. I can do strength training. I go on walks. I feel more alive now that I've educated myself on RA, learned what modifications worked for me, changed certain nutrition, added things into my life with a nutritionist's help, and all of these things. And I feel better and more capable of being the person I want to be than I was 3 years ago. And it's just amazing to see the shift in not just mindset, but in how in your nutrition, in your physical activity. Those things do help. They're not a cure, but they help you to continue living the best life you can with a chronic illness. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely, 100%. I get you.
Yes. But yes, it's just made me very passionate about helping other women to feel that way, especially with their new diagnosis. I've met a few women who've reached out to me on my Instagram and asked, hey, I've just started yoga. My hands are in so much pain. Like, does it get better? How do you feel? Like, I know that you've done it and you have RA. And getting messages like that mean a lot to me, because then I can share what I've learned with them. And the beginning of my yoga journey was rocky. It was so hard. And my first session, I remember crying and being like, I can't do this. And I thought that this is going to be something that would make me feel good the first time I stretched or meditated or whatever. And I didn't. I felt defeated, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I can't even do this anymore. But thankfully, I communicated with my yoga instructor, Miranda. She's amazing. She was so kind and was like, you know what? No, you can do this with modifications. She's like, I'm going to modify it with you, and we're going to rebuild strength. And I've been seeing her once a week, every day for the past year. And my progress from then to now is incredible. I didn't think I'd be able to do these poses again. And it just shows that really accepting where your body's at and being okay with that, and saying, okay, my body's not there yet, but it will be. I need to listen to it. I need to modify and communicate with the people that have come into your life. And Miranda had no idea that that was something I dealt with. And as soon as I told her, she was like, you know what? We're going to modify. I've worked with people who have different arthritis or autoimmune, and we can work through it. And I think that's so important, to communicate with the people that you're working with or working out with or whatever it may be, so they are aware, and they can help you through it too.
And they're so excited to help you because they want to see you do well too. And so I kind of want to compare with you. So like for me personally, I love yoga too. And I love Pilates, and I'm fine as long as I'm doing things where I'm sitting or standing. But the moment you try to get me down on the ground where I'm putting any kind of pressure on my wrists and my shoulders, That's
Mm-hmm.
when I'm like, nope, I'm done. Nope. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's been, I've had to try to find a lot of different ways of alternating how I'm doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to build that strength in your muscles in your upper body, but you got to be
Yes.
careful how you do it, and you need to be willing to ask, how can I modify this?
Yes.
So for you, what were your struggle ones?
Oh gosh. So I agree that my shoulders, well, my right shoulder, that's the only, well, so far, the only shoulder that has really given me flares or pain. So I feel like my right shoulder, my hands, my fingers were very swollen at the beginning, and I do get aches here and there. And then my knees, those were my big, like, um, trigger points, I guess. As soon as I would get on my knees, that's when I could feel the achiness. Um, and yeah, I think those are the main ones that really affect me. Sometimes my feet will ache, but really it's more swelling than anything.
Well, and what doesn't work for us one day might work for us another day,
Yes.
and vice versa. I mean, there's times where I get down to do poses where I'm sitting and whatever, and it's like, ooh, these are not liking me today. And so just trying to figure out what are the good pains and what are the really not so good ones, and how do I protect those joints?
Yes. And I think too, with yoga, starting off with a slower paced yoga. So I do Rafa yoga, which is healing yoga. And it is more about the stretching than it is about the building strength, which was still difficult because you still have to have a little bit of strength, right? Like to be able to hold some of the poses. But I have accumulated a little like spoonie kit for myself. So I bring my own stuff, and the women in the class kind of joke every time they see me, and they're like, oh, well, Chelsea already has all her stuff with her. So because they'll be helping each other grab their stuff, their equipment. And they're like, oh, Chelsea already has it covered, because they know I come prepared. I come because I don't know what's going to help me that day, what's going to be hurt, like a little more tight or stiff or achy. So I make sure I have like my blanket. I have some knee pads that I can use, that are just little small knee pads that I found on Amazon that give a little extra cushion on days that my knees are hurting more. I have my compression gloves. I just have an array of things just in case. So that way I can still be present in the practice with a little bit of modification and still feel good about my practice, even if it was a lighter session that day.
Do
So,
you use a regular yoga mat? Because I have one that is like really monstrous thick.
so I use a regular one. Yes, I think it's a 5-1. I don't know. I'll have to look, but it is a little bit thinner because I'm the opposite. The really plush yoga mats really affect my wrist and my knees because I feel like I'm not stable enough. And so I use a flatter one, and that gives me a little more self assurance that I'm not going to like tip over. But I'll bring gloves or I'll bring a blanket, and I can fold that up if I need to like use that for my wrist or use it under my knees. So,
Well, and I like to wear my yoga socks, and even at home, we bought two bolsters to have at home.
mhm.
And I have my little cube, although there's another word for it, but I call it the cube. What
Yeah.
I need to add to my collection is a ball.
Oh, yes. Like a tennis ball kind of thing.
Well, I don't know how to explain them. They're like maybe a softball size, and it looks kind of like a rubbery kids' play ball
Okay.
or like in between the knees.
Yes. Okay. I know what you're
Yes.
talking about. I
I'm not a yogi, so I can't use like the real words for you, but I
yes.
do love yoga and this is what I use.
Well, we have some of the um, tennis balls in a sock kind of thing, and we use them to roll and hit the pressure points. And I love that because it really helps on my shoulders, on my lower back. But we also use a foam roller, and that is my favorite thing to use because it really, really helps to stretch out on days where you're a little more stiff. Um,
Well, not that people can see me, but I was about to show you some of the things I have, but I think I put them in the closet. I'll show you later.
okay, well,
But I did have someone recommend I get a tennis ball because I have these areas on the back of my shoulder that the physical therapist said are so tight because they've been trying to protect my shoulder for so long. And she said they just are constantly in this contraction mode and they're not wanting to loosen back up. And so we've tried massage and all the things, and it's not working. And so today I'm getting a trigger point injection in that area. We'll see how that works. But I did have someone suggest I use a tennis ball because I just need to really constantly every day try to get that muscle to finally relax.
yes. Have you done a trigger point injection before?
No, so I'm a little nervous because I've had injections before, but not a trigger point one. So have
Mhm.
you?
No, I haven't. When I was going through my early stages of RA, they had talked to me about that for my shoulder. But they had also put it in a sling. So I didn't have any movement, which caused the tightness in it. And so I went against doctor's orders and I took the sling off because I just felt like that was making it worse for me. But they did tell me, or someone had mentioned about the tennis ball and helping to relieve that tension. And that really helped for me to be able to move my arm because it was very stiff.
Right.
And I needed to get that movement back in it.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think the area that they're injecting today is back kind of by my shoulder blade. There's a muscle back there that just, it's angry. And then there's one right up here on top of my shoulder that is
Mhm.
like a constant lump. And I'm like, well, I don't think I can really get a tennis ball up there, but I'm going to get creative and I'm going to keep on working on it. We have one of those massage gun things.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so every day on those two spots, I've been using it. So
I
I
was
don't
gonna ask. I was gonna ask if you had like a Theragun
know.
to be able to massage it out.
Yeah. So I'm going to keep positive. I'm going to keep trying. The goal is to get these muscles stronger before I have surgery so that I'm in even more less pain, I guess.
Hmm.
And that way, hopefully, after surgery, I should heal that much better and that much faster if we've strengthened all these muscles and gotten everything ready. So,
Hmm. Yes,
persevering.
yes. Keep us updated on that because I am interested about the injection. So
I will let you know.
yes.
Supposedly, within the next 2 days, I should feel great. I was told that I should take 2 days off from doing any of my physical therapy stuff at home. So I will take a break and then get right back at it. And hopefully, I'll have some relief.
Yeah, feel a little looser.
I hope so. That would be so nice because it does. It just feels tight all the time. And I'm walking around going like this. Well, no one can see me, but I'm rolling my shoulders all the time. And I'm hearing all this cracking. It's not my
Mm,
joints, it's the muscle rubbing.
yeah.
The muscle rubbing is
Oh,
making all the cracking. It sounds disgusting.
yeah. I remember my shoulder did that too, and then it would cause tension in my neck. And I'm like, why is this happening? Like this just all
Yes.
in that one spot.
And it snowballs into like, now I'm hurting here. Now I'm hurting here. Now I'm hurting here. And it all started from this thing over here.
Yeah, yes, I know.
Well,
Mm.
thank you so much for joining. And I hope I can have you on again, in the future and give us some updates on how you're doing.
Yes, hope to be back on soon. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with?
I think one thing that has helped me to stay motivated in my journey is really finding community with people. Don't be afraid to reach out to others, whether it be through Instagram. Everyone is so friendly and is willing to share advice or whatever they've learned to help somebody else. So do not be afraid to ask for help. Even if you're in a workout class and you're embarrassed about your weaknesses, ask the instructor. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself and don't think that people are judging you for asking for help, because you don't know what you don't know, and they might be able to share advice to you that's going to be a game changer in your life. So that was something that I didn't do at the beginning of my diagnosis, because I was so afraid of what people were going to think of me. And now that I have put my pride to the side and I've asked for help, I've learned so much throughout this journey and met so many great people. And I think that's going to be something that's going to help in your wellness journey to be able to succeed.
Absolutely. And I think we need to put it on a t-shirt. You don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
All right, Chelsea, we forgot to talk about this, but why don't you bring up what your small business is and what you do?
Yes. So my small business is Juniper and Wildflower. I run it with my mom, so it is mother-daughter owned. We make a bunch of different fun homemade items. So we make custom bag tassels, beanies. We have a lot of Spoonie items coming to the shop soon. Some Spoonie keychains, tote bags, and some more. We also make t-shirts, cups, and wristlets. I'm trying to think. Also some dog bandanas. So we have a little bit of everything, and we will be posting it on our Etsy very soon. So be sure to follow.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we have a link for it in the show notes.
Yes. Thank
you again. And until next time, don't forget your spoon. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. The information should not be taken as a replacement for medical, clinical, professional advice, diagnoses, or medical intervention. My Spoonie sisters and guests will not be held liable for any of the consequences of such action or inaction. Trigger warning. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics including, but not limited to, suicide, abuse, mental illness, and chronic disease. You are advised to refrain from listening if you are likely to be offended or adversely impacted by any of these topics. None of the guests or hosts will be responsible for your use of the information contained therein. Life is not merely to be alive, but to be well. Living a life with a chronic illness is best described with one word: unpredictable. Be Well's products are designed to make the unpredictable easier to deal with. Back when I was getting my infusions, I would have loved to have their adult zip hoodie. They even have one in pink. They also have everything from one-day pill holders to urgency buckets. So remember, they want to make your life a little easier. So be sure to check out Be Well.